Welcome to a brand new edition of the TF Motorsports official podcast. I'm Thomas Fresco. We are live once again, and this time it is an extra episode as we have a new interview going on. And this time, it's actually somebody in the industry. I've never done this before. As you know, the majority of them has been centered around people like as fans, but I've never done it with anybody that either crews or drives. But today we got Nick Migues, who is here on the podcast as he is part of Hot Wheels Motorsports Live. Welcome on in.
What's up, man?
Yeah, it's really cool to have you on here because I've never done anything like this before. A really cool thing I always wanted to do. I mean, the only time I really got to interview a driver technically was for like Motorsports Hour and have like some of those clips like added onto the episode. But this is a
Yeah.
full uncut interview with more than just one question, so it's definitely going to be a fun watch.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm excited. I've never done a podcast before, so it's my first podcast appearance. Wow, so I think this will be cool.
All right, so usually when I interview somebody, the first question I always like to ask is like what got you interested in the industry? Like what was the first major thing that really got you into it?
Um, Honestly, my dad, um, my dad, like a lot of other people, grew up when Bigfoot was becoming a thing and then watched Tough Tracks, and so, my dad's been a lifelong fan of the sport. And so then I just got into it because of him. Like, obviously, I don't remember this, but like they told me one of my first toys when I was a kid was the Gravedigger Hot Wheels. Um, so I became a fan because of him, and I've gotten into the industry because of him. So yeah, I would say I pretty much owe it all to him.
What year do you think you got you first became a fan?
Ah, man, I mean, I would say I've been a fan since I was born, basically. But I think my first show, I went to a show in 2003. Um, as the first show I remember, anyways. I would have been five. And I just went to like it was almost kind of like a night of destruction thing. And I had Tough Enough and Cyborg and Playing for Keeps when Jesse Berge still owned it, actually. Was my first show as a kid. So yeah, as long as I can remember.
And for when you were a fan before you became somebody that worked in the industry, what was been your big favorite moment around that point?
Ooh, that's a hard one, I guess. I'd say one thing that stuck with me. I remember seeing it on TV. It's really random. I don't know why it stuck with me, but I just thought it was so crazy. Couldn't tell you what year or where it was, but I remember as a kid watching on TV, there was a gravedigger truck that was doing donuts somewhere, and in the middle of the donut, the wheel came off, and then the wheel caught on fire. And that's always just stuck to me as like, and it's not something a lot of people talk about. And I know it's happened because I've talked to other people about it. I didn't make this up, I don't think. But it's always been one moment that stuck with me. And then I'd say the other thing is um, I'm from Kansas, so I only lived like 45 minutes from Two Extreme Racing, and so pretty much anything good they did, like always watching Jimmy or Lindsey Wink when he was an outlaw, kick button racing, was always really exciting. Also,
And after watching it for a while, you eventually moved up the ranks, and suddenly you're now part of the industry. Where did that all start?
yeah. So as I just mentioned, I'm from Kansas. Like I said, I lived like 45 minutes from Two Extreme Racing. So actually, when I was like I want to say like 7 or 8 years old. It was around 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. My uncle Darren actually got a job with Two Extreme Racing, and then about a year later, he got my dad Cameron a job with Two Extreme Racing, and so I just kind of had the opportunity from there to grow up around it. I got to know a lot of people even before I was in the industry. My dad and my uncle have both done a lot of things. My dad is still with Two Extreme Racing to this day, but he's worked for a lot of other people, done a lot of other things. And my uncle Darren, he's been driving for a long time. He's driven for Two Extreme, and he drove Bigfoot and Stone Crusher, and Then in 2014, I want to say he bought his own trucks. He bought Just Get Her Done and Robo Machine from Mitch Telechka and started running him. And so then basically the day after high school, after I graduated high school, I started working for him and I've been doing it ever since.
Crazy, right out of the gate like that.
Yeah,
Because
literally, I
yeah,
graduated high school and the next day I drove to the first show that I did with them as like an employee because I'd done shows with them before, but I started working for him literally the day after I graduated high school.
and what did they have you do? Just work on trucks, or what'd you do?
Yeah, yeah, I was the crew guy. So, I mean, I was in the shop every day just working on trucks, fixing them, pre-racing, um, and then we got to the shows, unload, tire up, clean trailer, all that kind of stuff. I did pretty much anything and everything except drive, just because I was new at the time. But I would say my job pretty much encompassed everything else when it came to just working on the trucks and making sure they were ready to go.
When you were working on the trucks, like what's like the toughest thing you've ever had to do when working for them?
Hmm. Nothing is like too crazy hard, honestly, when it comes to working on monster trucks. They're fairly simple for the most part. Um, I would say probably one of the craziest things we've had to do um, was in Miami, 2016. Kalen had a pretty gnarly wreck in racing, and so we were in the shop all day, every day for you know probably 14, 15 hours a day putting the truck back together because it just totally destroyed the front end, had to fix the body, and I mean, there was all kinds of stuff tore up. So I would say that's probably one of the more challenging things I've done, or or this is after I worked for Darren, but there was one time we had to, when I worked for JR McNeil, we had to back half FTI torque in like 2.5 weeks is what we had off between shows. So our fab guy cut the back of the entire back half of the chassis off and rebuilt it in like 2 weeks. And then we had to hurry up and put the truck back together and load it up and head off to our show.
And yeah, that obviously could put a little number on you. Um, Now going into the next part, and that is of course when you finally got that opportunity to get behind the wheel of a monster truck. When did that first come to you?
So the first time I ever jumped a monster truck would have been, I think it was 2017. We're at a monster truck throwdown show. Um, and we actually didn't work for anybody at the time. We were just, I had quit working for Darren, and me and Kristen, we had moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and we were just going to any show we could find around us. And there was one in, I think it was Lake Julian, North Carolina, like 3 hours from us. So we decided to go. And Matt Pagliulo had Jester there, and he was letting, like, Elliot had this thing going for a while at throwdown shows where like he would team up with team owners and get like their tech officials and stuff to jump trucks so they could get that feeling. Um, and so Frank Warner was doing it that day in Jester. And then Matt was like, hey, why don't you jump in the truck too and go jump it a couple times? So the first truck I ever jumped was actually Jester, which was really cool. And then I did my first show in 2019 driving Exterminator. Because we needed a fill-in driver. It's kind of like super last minute. I had to like overnight some driving gear to the show so that I could drive. But yeah, that was my first show.
And did they have to adjust the seat or whatnot?
Um, Sometimes you do. I've found personally, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I would say perfect, but I'm almost like the right like medium build that I've fit pretty well in almost any seat that I've driven in. I've driven, I think I'm up to 13 or 14 different trucks I've driven, and almost all of them I've only had to make like minor adjustments to like seatbelt lengths and stuff. I had to move pedals a couple of times, but for the most part, like I can get in almost any truck and drive it comfortably.
And were
But for some people, you do have to make quite a bit of movement. It just depends on, you know. what size you are and then what size the seat is in the truck and all that kind of stuff.
Were you nervous at all in your first show?
Um, I was and I wasn't. It's always nerve wracking, but I mean, I still have this to this day. Like, I'll be super nervous before I go, but then as soon as the truck starts, my brain and everything else just kind of shuts off, and instinct just kind of takes over. And especially like I've been around it for so long, and I learned how to drive a truck. Like not jumping it, but parking the truck for pit parties or unloading it and loading it out of the trailer and all that kind of stuff. I was really familiar with the idea of how to drive a truck. And so, I kind of have my bearings going into it. Obviously, it's still nerve wracking because you're driving somebody else's, $300,000 piece of equipment. But yeah, usually once I start the truck, it all kind of goes away.
Oh, okay, so yeah, okay. Yeah, because I kind of get that too. When I raced a couple years ago in street stocks, it
Yeah.
it was pretty much the same thing. It's all nerves, and then it just goes away as soon as you start it up and start driving.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like everything else just kind of shuts off and your instincts take over and it just kind of goes from there.
And how many trucks have you? Well, trucks and identities, if you could count that too. How many different identities and trucks have you driven?
Um, so I'm up to 11 identities at the moment. And then trucks, I think I'm at either 13 or 14. That I can't remember.
Is those trucks mostly from similar teams, or did you go to like all sorts of different teams for like either fill-ins or competing?
It's a pretty wide span actually because up until like the last couple years, most of my driving has been fill-in driving. So I drove Exterminator for J.R. McNeil. Um, Later on, after I had left working for Darren, and started driving for other people, I went back and I've driven both of his trucks, Nitro Menace and Jailbird. I drove Iron Warrior, Buffalo Tremor, and Black Stallion for Mike
Ooh,
Vaughters. Um, I've driven Carolina Crusher for Triple B, and then I've driven a bunch of Hot Wheels trucks. So I've driven Craig Christensen's Tiger Shark. I've driven both Craig Christensen and Paul Brode's Bone Shaker truck. And then I drove, um, let's see, what else did I drive? I drove Paul Brode's and PEI's Skelosaurus truck, and then Paul Brode's and PEI's Mega Rex truck. Um, I think that's it.
quite a lot of identities.
Yeah.
Which one's your favorite so far that you've driven?
Mm, Probably Buffalo Tremor actually.
Yeah.
Because like I said earlier, like my dad grew up like watching Tough Tracks and stuff, and so he actually had a Tough Tracks VHS that I used to watch a lot when I was a kid. And for whatever reason, Buffalo Tremor was just always the truck that like stuck out to me. It was my favorite truck in the Tough Track series. And so then um, I always said like if I ever got an opportunity to bring a truck back from back in the day, like I would bring back Buffalo Trimmer. And so getting to drive it was probably top tier, number one favorite, just because of the history it has for me. And then I didn't even know I was driving that truck. Um, like I knew I was driving for Vaughters, but I thought it still had the Taurus body on it. And then like I showed up, we unloaded the truck, and lo and behold, it was Buffalo Tremor because whoever had driven Taurus the weekend before had wrecked Taurus. So this was the only good body they had. So I got really lucky too. Like I didn't even know I was going to get to drive it. It just was a surprise, which was really cool.
And it's pretty much a full circle moment for you after seeing the
Yeah,
VHSs,
exactly.
then right away. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it was a very cool moment. One of my favorite weekends. Had a lot of fun driving it.
Yeah. Now that kind of sparked a question in me. So, um, now when it comes to old identities that should come back, what's an identity that you would want to see back in the industry?
Man, that's a tough one because there's so many from back then that have come back and are back.
Yeah, nostalgia's running pretty high.
It is. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question to answer. I think it'd be cool to see Bulldozer come back in
Ooh.
some capacity. That was always a cool one. Or obviously this would require sponsorship, but U.S. Air Force Afterburner was always one of my favorite trucks as a kid too. I'd love to see that come back.
And now let's get on over to Hot Wheels now, as obviously you're one of the ones that's working for the Hot Wheels Monster Trucks Live series that's been going on since 2019. When did you first start with that promotion?
So my first show would have been in 2023. So originally we were hired by Team KCM to do the international tour. But then I did one show here in the States driving Tiger Shark, just because I'd never been to a Hot Wheels show before, to get a feel for it. And then we did most of 2024 on the international series with Team KCM. Me and my wife Kristen were both driving Bone Shaker. We were taking turns. And then at the end of last year, we decided to move over to. We actually had like a split deal going for a while where my wife was driving Mega Rex for PEI, and then I was actually the crew guy for Bigfoot, um, which lasted up until this last round in New Zealand, um, where I did some fill-in driving for her, driving her truck down there in Mega Rex.
And yeah, so you got into Hot Wheels. You're currently in it right now. So how's the promotion?
Um, I like it. It's easy. It's easy on the trucks. And it's a lot of fun. The kids, you have tons of kids that bring their toys through and are so excited that they have the little toy version of the real life truck, and the truck is actually there. Um, you know, I know our shows are nothing crazy, but we have a target audience and we hit it, and people enjoy the show, and that's all that really matters to us. We have a good time with it. And, then added bonus for us, like I said, we're on the international tour. So getting to bring that all over the world is really cool. Like we just broke a bunch of attendance records in New Zealand. Did one show for 40,000 people, which was
Wow,
absolutely
really?
insane. Yeah. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's different, but it's fun.
But yeah, I think. Well, yeah, I was gonna get to the point. Hot Wheels is. I think they're really starting to make some noise because I saw uh, this year they went to a speedway. They've had like I think like four different stadiums they went to this year internationally, I believe. Right?
I think only three. We did three in New Zealand.
Well,
Um,
they did go to Puerto Rico. I think that was that the
oh
weird
yeah, yeah,
shaped
yep,
one,
you're
right?
right.
Yeah. So
Yes,
they
I forgot about that one.
so they did that, and they gone to a lot more arenas as well in the U.S. And obviously the question was, when was the series eventually going to make it to U.S. stadium soil? As a couple of episodes in the podcast ago, me and my buddies we were making predictions on when that would be, but we were wrong. It actually was a lot sooner than what we thought it was going to be. Because now they're going to Idaho, I believe it is, next year in
Yeah,
June, and I think it's 14. Someone told me, but
yeah.
it's crazy on how much that tour is just like suddenly growing at an alarming rate. Um, what is your thoughts on that stadium event being announced, and like is that like really huge for the promotion?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, we just got done doing the three in New Zealand, and they were awesome shows. They were something different. Like for us as drivers, like obviously it's fun crushing cars every week, but it's also nice to be able to change it up. So I know for everybody on that tour now, on the U.S. tour, who haven't really got to do anything different like us, because we've done multiple dirt shows now, we've done multiple stadium shows, and most of those guys haven't really got to do that in a while. So I think it's cool for them. And then they're combining both the tours to have 14 trucks there, which I think is really cool. And I think it's just cool to see the tour grow, and change it up and try new things and expand, and trying to hit more places and, not just expand as what they're doing their shows, but, like I just said, going to more places with going to Boise, nobody's really tapped into the college football stadium market, I guess, if you will, and they're doing the Boise State football stadium, which is cool. So, yeah, I think it's really cool to see that evolution come into place. I know they've wanted to do it for a while. Um, so yeah, and it's cool to be a part of it.
And from all this growth of Hot Wheels over the last few years, and suddenly they seem to be at the strongest that they've been in quite a while. Where do you see the tour going in 5 years?
I think they're going to keep expanding. I think, as long as the stadium shows continue to do well, their goal is to do more and more. And yeah, I know internationally we're trying to expand into even more markets. Um, so I think that's their main goal, is to just keep trying to get bigger and expand the audience and take the show to new places.
So, do you know the inside scoop on like how they plan out the tracks for the stadium, since that's a very unique thing about it?
I think for we didn't really have much of an idea going into our shows, but then once they kind of laid out the first track, they let us have a lot of input on things we wanted to change and do a little bit differently. So every week in New Zealand, our track was a little bit different, just because all of us drivers had different ideas. And I was like, okay, well, let's try this and let's try this. And, um, so I know going forward, a lot of the shows will be similar because they really liked how our shows went in New Zealand. And they told us that, we were kind of just testing out the format. So I think going forward, a lot of them like Boise and stuff will probably be pretty similar to what we did in New Zealand, but I think that made for some really good shows. Um, so I'm excited to see all the U.S. guys get on the track and try it out too.
And do you think they're going to be adding like any extra stuff? Because I think I don't know how they do the floor space. Do you think with the floor space they're gonna have the other areas tarped like New Zealand, or are they gonna utilize it right up to the wall?
It's hard to say. I could see, I don't know if they'll do anything different track wise, but I could see the floor being bigger. Um, all the stadiums that we were doing in New Zealand, they were all rugby stadiums. So the floors were absolutely massive. It would take an insane amount of dirt to cover it all. So they just went with like a pretty close to like a football field size thing. I think it was a little bit smaller than like a football field. So it wouldn't take much more for them to build a bigger track. I don't think, as for what they'll do at that space, I'm not sure. But I don't think they're opposed to that kind of thing. Adding more stuff and changing it up. We've had a couple shows on our international tour where we've added an extra set of cars or something to take up extra space that we have too. So, I could definitely see them being creative. I think they've got the right people running it, to put on a good show and be creative with the space that they have.
And with now, I don't think I've heard really anybody talk about like the process of going into a Hot Wheels show and then doing the competition. Like we've heard it from Monster Jam and a couple of other tours before. But how does one day at Hot Wheels go? Like how do you get to the event, and like what do they tell you and whatnot?
Yeah. So our tour is quite a bit different. Like I said, I really haven't dived too much into the US stuff. Um, I've only done 3 or 4 shows, but our tour is kind of unique as well because we're international. So, um, basically, like on a show day, they'll give us a time for when our shuttle is leaving because they'll shuttle us to the arena unless our hotel is close enough to the arena that we can walk,
Oh,
which we really like because we actually all have everybody on our team has electric scooters. So we ride our electric scooters back and forth to the arena
oh,
a lot of the
nice.
time if it's close enough. Otherwise, 7:30, whatever it is, usually we'll hop on the bus and get shuttled over to the arena, and then we basically we all most of the time we're running in wintertime no matter where we are. So it's always cold, so we always have engine heaters on the trucks and battery chargers and stuff. So essentially we show up, we take battery chargers off, take engine heaters off, park trucks for crash zone, and then we usually have like an hour, hour and a half. We'll have a driver's meeting, and then we all just kind of hang out. If you follow anybody, especially like Rebecca Schnell, um, we make a lot of TikToks in that time, which is funny. And then we have our crash zone, which is like a pit party. It's usually, I think it's right around an hour and 45 minutes usually, sign autographs, all that good stuff. And then we have an hour where we all go out, we do interviews, they talk about the show, um, and then we do the show, which is we usually, like our typical arena show, we start with wheelies, and then they'll do like a t-shirt giveaway, then we do a donut competition, and then we have a robot that comes out and rips the roof off a car and has like a whole thing and shoots fire and stuff. Then we have intermission. Then we do FMX. Then we do long jump and then freestyle is our basic show. And then, you know, 99% of the time we don't break anything. So we just do a quick once over on the truck, check some bolts, top off the fuel, plug battery chargers back in, and then do it all over again. Or if we only have one show, then bust the tires off and load everything up in the containers.
And I always wanted to ask this because I've seen the videos of the trucks being shipped out from U.S. to international for Hot Wheels shows. Um,
Yeah.
how does that all go? Is it like a huge task, or like a is it hard on you guys, or is it all up to the other people who are in charge of that?
No, it's not bad. I mean, like Hot Wheels has a company that handles all the logistics for us. And then, like we all have containers that are specific to us for the most part. We did have, which I'll talk about in a minute, we had an interesting challenge with Australia and New Zealand. Um, but normally we have containers that are outfitted just like a regular semi trailer would be. Um, so it's just like anything else, basically. You take off the tires and we let the air out of the shocks, and then you just push tires in, load trucks and toolboxes and all that good stuff in. It's just a little bit more spread out. Like, a typical two truck team, you can fit everything you need inside of a 53-foot trailer. Um, and you have just that one trailer. But like all of us, we all have like essentially one container per truck. And everybody does a little bit different. Like at PEI, we have two trucks over there right now. And one truck goes in one container with its tires and some parts and a toolbox. And then the other truck has its tires and some spare parts and another toolbox in it. But everybody does everything a little bit different. Like um, on the other side of that, Team Bigfoot has one container that just has like two or three spare parts, and then both trucks go in there. And the other container has all the rest of the spare parts, the toolboxes, and all the tires for both trucks. So everybody does it a little bit differently. But for the most part, it's not much different, honestly. And in some ways, it's a little bit easier because containers are all sitting on the ground, so you don't have to push tires up a ramp into a trailer or anything like that, honestly.
And has there been any challenges with those containers from the time you've been in the international series so far?
The container themselves, no, we did. I forgot I mentioned this a minute ago, so I'm sure a lot of people saw it, but coming out of Europe, trucks were supposed to go to Australia, and normally they're shipped on a boat. And like I said, we have dedicated containers um, that all of our stuff goes in every single time. But there was some delays with the boats, couldn't get out of Europe in time, and so it actually got so delayed that they wouldn't make it to Australia in time on a boat. So we actually, in the middle of July, we flew over to Europe and unloaded our containers and got the trucks ready to go on a plane. And so then I was part of the process, but then there was a portion where only like one person from each team basically went and unloaded the trucks out of the containers and all the parts. We put all of our parts in these like plastic pallets for ease of moving them around, and put it all on a plane. And the trucks got flown to Australia on a plane. They landed like I think a week before our first show, and then we got temporary rental containers that we put all of our stuff in and toted all of our stuff around in Australia and in New Zealand, which was a bit of a challenge because just because of the way everything was set up, we had to share containers. And so we actually had one container that had 16 tires in it from Team Bigfoot and PEI, all in one container. And then there was two containers that had just trucks. And then we shared a container that had all of our parts in it. And then we had another container that um, had all of our toolboxes. And the other half was actually like all the FMX stuff. Um, So it was a bit challenging because like all of our containers are outfitted to tie everything down the way we want to tie it down. Everything fits just the right way because we put so much time into organizing them. So that was a bit of a challenge, like having to kind of figure it out on the fly.
That's crazy. I honestly um I thought of that like once I saw the containers I thought like what if they don't make it on time and like I would imagine it'd be like a huge amount of panic or just stress levels going up, I assume.
Yeah, it definitely is because, like I said, I mean, we actually we had to leave a lot of spare parts behind because you can only take so much on a plane. So there was that for us. Like, okay, what parts do we take? What do we not take? How much of this do we need? Like, there's a lot of questions there because this is the first time I've ever had to do anything like this. So it definitely added a lot of stress and a lot of challenges for everybody. But we got through it okay, and everybody survived. Australia, New Zealand, and it went good, all things considered. Um, I think part of our thing was is our European tour ran a lot longer than it ever has before. We ran all the way into May, and normally the tour's over in like April, sometimes even March. Um, so we just there just happened to be the one delay, and there wasn't a lot of time to do anything but what we did. But everybody made it work.
And yeah, glad everything at least worked out for you. Um, Now when you're in Hot Wheels, obviously the main thing is in the concrete arenas is the Thunder National type of style that they've had since the inception of Hot Wheels, where you're able to finally crush cars in arena. So
Yeah.
since you've competed in Hot Wheels and you've crushed a couple cars, I've never asked anybody this, but how does it feel to like crush cars? Is it like an interesting experience when you're driving? Does it feel funny? Like what does it feel like when you're crushing a car in a monster truck?
It's pretty cool. It's kind of weird. The biggest thing about hitting cars is they're so unpredictable. Every car is different. Like there's cars, especially I found in the UK. I don't know what they make their cars out of in the UK, but they are like running into a brick wall when you hit them.
I
Um,
wonder, do they have like older models or something still?
no, it's even like their newer cars because most of the cars we get
Really?
are probably, if I had to guess, like mid 2000s, 2010s, even a little bit newer sometimes. They just must like I think it must be something to do with like their safety standards or something. Because running into those cars are like hitting a brick wall, and then like no matter how many times you hit them, every single time you hit it is like hitting a fresh car. But then you go to other countries, and the first truck that hits it just plows through it, flattens the car, and there's nothing left of the car after that. And so then it's just kind of like hitting a ramp almost, or even worse than a ramp because like if the car doesn't crush even, then the car can throw you sideways or do all kinds of crazy stuff. Or it's flat. Like we've had a lot of them where like they'll take like the engines and the drivetrains and everything out of them, so they're super light. They crush super easy, and then because they're light, like you'll hit them, and then the whole car stack will just slide away from you. So then you're like in the middle of a wheelie or trying to jump or whatever, chasing the car stack because it's like sliding away from you. So the biggest thing is it's just super unpredictable because you never know what exactly they're gonna do.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how some of those crush cars are, and yeah, I honestly did like I had this thought in my mind again for a while about like, all right, if I was in a truck, like what would it feel like if I was crushing a car? Because obviously it's like a main staple for like decades now, and Hot Wheels is one of the tours that still has it, though it's a little scarce these days.
Yeah,
But still, I had this thought of like, all right, like what does it feel like when I do it? Because looking at it, it's natural, but like when you're actually doing it, I believe it's like, okay, this is something completely different.
yeah. For the
That's
most part,
yeah.
honestly, like hitting just about anything kind of feels the same to me at least. Like especially like once they can kind of get flat and you're just jumping them. There's not any huge difference because we don't like like roll over the cars and crush them anymore. But when you're driving on them, it is weird because like it's super bumpy, which is kind of funny. But But honestly, like overall, like I enjoy it. I didn't used to, but the more I've done it and the better I've gotten at it, it's kind of fun. It kind of creates a challenge when the cars are all kind of sideways. They're like when I was driving Bone Shaker, I was second out in wheelies, but I was the first one to hit my car stack. So I always had a fresh car, and that truck really likes to wheelie. So like I kind of got good at like being able to roll up to a car and just drive up the car and then drive across the back tires or drive across the cars on just the back tires, which was a lot of fun. Um, so it's a challenge, so it makes it a lot of fun.
And does it feel satisfying when you're crushing a car, or do you like not really notice it?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's especially like I said when you're doing like a wheelie or something, it's fun. Um, and it's just cool to kind of do the old school thing, you know what I mean?
Yep. And now going into the look of the future. We got 2026 rapidly approaching. We're already on the 17th of October, and I think all the big events of Hot Wheels, I believe, has already happened. What's going on next year? Is there any like major plans you have, or like is there like something that you really want to like stick to? That's like a goal.
I'm pretty excited for next year. Like I mentioned earlier, we work for PEI, and we're actually expanding to 4 trucks next year. So, Team KCM has decided that they didn't want to run the international tour anymore. So they're going. I'm not sure what they're doing next year actually. But to replace them, we're building 2 more trucks, and then Bigfoot is sending Bigfoot 24 over to our tour also. So I'm pretty excited about that because it'll be the first time. I haven't really talked about her much, but me and my wife Kristen, we're both drivers, and next year will be the first time we're both doing like a full length tour together. We've done shows driving together, but we've never done an entire like tour. And we'll both be driving for PEI, so I'm pretty excited about that. Getting to do a whole tour with her, and yeah, from there, I don't think as of right now that I know of, we don't have like any different or big events scheduled at the moment. But they're always working on something, so you never know.
And yeah, and you and Kristen competing in Hot Wheels and also just kind of like having fun on the tour. How was that like?
It's a lot of fun, you know. I really enjoy competing with her. I think I probably drive a little bit harder when I'm competing against her because, um, naturally, I'm just a little bit more competitive with her. So it's a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun, like getting to watch her drive because I think just competing with her pushes me to be a better driver because she is such a good driver. She's very technical driver in a lot of ways. Um, so it's a lot of fun to watch. And so then I'm always pushing myself to try to keep up with her, which is a lot of fun. So it's a really cool opportunity to be able to do that together.
And how long has she been driving?
So she started driving in 2018.
And and then you said she started first in Hot Wheels, or did you start first?
No, so she we worked for JR McNeil from 2017 to 2021. And so she started out in Raising Cane, and then she did some Monster Jam stuff. She did one show in Megalodon. She drove Monster Mutt Dalmatian on a triple threat tour. And then she drove Wolf's Head on a stadium tour in 2020. And that was her main truck was Wolf's Head, but she's like me, she's done a lot of fill-in driving, and I think she's up to like 12 or 13 trucks now herself. So she's been driving a long time and has driven a lot of different trucks in a lot of places.
And now we're I think we kind of got the majority of the questions. If anybody has any other questions in the comments, you could put them in. We'll keep Nick on for a couple more minutes here on this live edition of the podcast. Um, so while we wait for a couple questions, again, just wanted to ask. So with Hot Wheels, they got a lot of identities, and I think they're getting pretty close to having almost 14 trucks entirely. Um, what's one identity you really would like to have on the chassis?
So I actually like Meg Rex is probably my favorite truck. So if I was gonna pick a truck to drive all the time, it would be Megarex. But at the same time, like I don't really have like a huge preference. I always joke with people like, once you're in the truck, you can't see what the outside of the truck looks like. You can't see what the name on the side says. So like I'm just happy to drive. Like I don't care what body's on the truck, what name's on the side of it. Like I just really enjoy driving and put on a show for people. But if I was gonna pick, it'd be Megarex. But that's my wife's truck, so I know I'll be driving that next year.
And sometime in like the like not next year, but like in the really long term, what's something in your career that you would really like to do, like maybe 5, 10 years from now? What's something you're like really looking forward to trying?
I would love to do. Obviously, I've never gotten to do it, so would love to branch back into Monster Jam as a driver one day. Or the other thing I really would love to do actually is I would love to do a toughest monster truck tour, arena
Ooh,
tour.
yeah.
Um, they look like they're a lot of work, but I would love to just go to those shows where everybody drives crazy hard for just for the heck of it and has fun. And the tours just seem like a lot of fun, so I'd love to do one of those tours.
All right. Now I think I'll have one last question for now because it looks like we're not gonna have a question coming in. So obviously you've been a fan for a while and you've driven, you've been in the community, and also you've been a crew member. You've done practically everything. So if you had your very own monster truck series, whether it's a tour or a point series, what would it be like? What's some things that you would love to have in it, and what would you do with it?
Hmm. I don't know. It's something I've never really thought about. It's a good question.
It's definitely a pretty usually a tough question for some people.
Yeah, it's never something I put a lot of thought into. I guess like I really like racing, so I think I wouldn't do like a racing only series, 'cause I like freestyle too and all that kind of stuff. But I'd love to do like just something with different creative racetracks. Like, what kind of weird racing style can we come up with or fit into this track this week? I think that would be fun. Um, so I guess that'd probably be my main focus is like just coming up with like different ways to race.
And yeah, I don't know what it is. I think either it's because of seeing some of the berm tracks or watching dirt racing at like Middletown, or um, either that or just being amazed at like the Lebanon races. I think like the racing side of things has really been hooking me recently, and now
It,
I can see why some people are going crazy over it. And Monday, I am going to be talking about it, so just keep that in mind for anyone who's going to be listening in. Um, but yeah, what's something that you like about the racing?
it's just I think it's just the competition aspect more than anything, and it's just like I have so much fun racing. Like obviously I want to win, but like win, lose or draw, like it's a good race and it's just a lot of fun. Like on this New Zealand tour, I was racing Dylan Bartz and Bone Shaker, and he put me in the other lane, and so like I was kind of thrown off, and we came around the corner kind of at the same time. I was a little bit ahead of him, but the truck hooked on me, and I went up on two tires, and I kind of jabbed the brakes and lost my momentum. So he caught back up to me in the corner, and then like even though the truck was still on two tires, like I just laid into it. He laid into it, and we were just in a drag race to the finish, and he beat me by like a tire. And but even though like I lost, like that was one of the most fun races I've ever been a part of, just because of how good of a race it was. Um, and then like one of my other favorite racing memories when I was driving for my uncle Darren. We were out in the middle of nowhere somewhere at some racetrack, and me and him made it to the finals together. And we were doing kind of similar to the J Hook course we were doing this past week, or in New Zealand, but except we were finishing over cars. But we came down the corner together, and we both like really wanted to win, so we both like way overdrove the corner. But there was a van stack like between us in the middle of the thing, in the middle of the two lanes. And so like I come around and I hit the van stack like with the side of the truck, and he drove so hard into the corner that he went up on top of the van stack, went over the van stack and actually hit me, and then got stuck on the van stack. And so then like I went on to win the race. I didn't even see him, and I turned around to like do a donut because I knew I'd won, and he's facing the wrong direction, high centered on the van stack, like just hanging there. And so we got him unstuck, and he comes back and he parks next to me, and we're both unbuckled. We just look at each other and start laughing, just because of how funny of a race it was and how much fun it was. So stuff like that, like just the competition and having close races, win or lose, is just a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think in the future, do you think Hot Wheels should do more races on their series?
Well, as a fan of racing, I would say yes. Um, like I said, racing's a lot of fun, and I don't think that you're gonna find many monster truck drivers that don't enjoy racing. And I think most people, most fans watching enjoy racing. So, I think, especially if they keep doing stadiums, I think you'll see more racing, hopefully, because I know we all enjoy it.
Definitely. There actually is one fan question from Michael the Snake Monkey. So, question: if you were able to get into Monster Jam, would you have a truck of your own or have an existing truck that is on your chassis?
Um, I'd be okay with either. Like I said, I'd love to have my own identity. But at the same time, like I said, once I'm in the truck, I can't see the body, I can't see the name on the side of the truck. So, really at the end of the day, either way, it doesn't matter to me. But I think it would be cool to have my own truck in Monster Jam for sure.
Well, you know what that truck would be named?
I've always wanted to name a truck Twister. Just kind of like I didn't realize it before that there was a truck named Mr. Twister back in like the '90s. So when I first came up with it, like I said, I'm from Kansas. I also lived in Oklahoma for a long time. So I was like in Tornado Alley, always around tornadoes. And then also the Twister movies, one of my favorite movies. So that's kind of where I got the name inspiration from. And then later I found out there was already a truck named Twister. Um, so then it just kind of fit along with that too. But that would be my identity, I suppose.
All right. Is there any final things you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Other than thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, Nick. Again, it was a pleasure to have you on here, and it's always great to be chatting with somebody in the industry.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I think it's cool for everybody when we can talk about what we get to do and share some behind the scenes stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely, and hopefully we can do some more driver interviews here. And Nick, once again, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and hope to see you in the near future.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, and thank you everybody else for tuning in live here on the podcast. As we had a great interview with Nick Migues, who is in Hot Wheels and will continue to do so in the near future. And we'll, of course, have our next episode, by the looks of it, Monday. So be sure to go ahead and be on the Discord server. I'll remind you when that episode comes, and it'll be definitely a very fun conversation as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in live, and we will see you very, very soon.